The White House reacting to last night's debate, arguing President Trump dominated the final showdown with Joe Biden. Here to talk about it is White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, some may be surprised to see the president has not tweeted yet today. Have you spoken with the president?
I was with him all last night. I haven't spoken with him yet today, but I can tell you this, Sandra, as we were heading home on Air Force One, I had the polls rolling in on my phone, and I kept bringing them back to the president, and we just saw 94% support in one poll for his debate performance, 74%, 84%, one by one. America acknowledging that President Trump brought the message the American people care about to the stage, that he will fight for you. He will not fight for Washington, for Wall Street, and for the swamp.
Kayleigh, there's questions about, and obviously heading into the debate, about how the president was going to handle the Hunter Biden email laptop story, whether or not there would be a question from the moderator or if the president would have to bring it up himself. He clearly did. But if I put up on the screen this tweet by Jim Jordan, a staunch supporter of the president, he tweeted this out: 3 basic facts Joe Biden has not denied. Hunter Biden's emails are authentic. Joe Biden is in fact the big guy. If any of this were untrue, the Bidens would say so. Heading into this, so many of his supporters wanted President Trump to ask those questions of the former vice president. He didn't do that. Was that a missed opportunity?
No, because I think the president, when he took that debate stage, we already had an individual come out, the business partner of Hunter Biden, a witness to all of this, a firsthand witness corroborating this. So at this point, I think that's indisputable. But what the president did was this: he laid out the facts that Joe Biden has taken money from Ukraine, from China, from Russia. And take this a step further. What does this mean for you, the American people? On China, the biggest emitter of CO2, how do you solve climate change when you're on China's payroll? How do you solve a global pandemic brought in by China when you're on China's payroll? How do you solve the problems when we look around the world? National security. How do you look out for the interests of the United States when you are on the payroll of the chief adversary of the United States?
Okay, and then he turned that around and counterattacked the president over his bank accounts and taxes paid in China. I want to ask you about this exchange. Immigration obviously came up, and here was the exchange with Biden and Trump. Watch.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border.
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what we're talking about.
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what we're talking about. What happened?
It was one of the more heated exchanges last night, some reviewing the debate and that moment this morning, saying there's still some unanswered questions there. Did the president go far enough in responding to Joe Biden's attacks there?
Yes, he did, by pointing out the fact that this all started on Joe Biden and Barack Obama's watch. I mean, there was no greater enabler of the cartels, of the coyotes, than the Obama-Biden administration, which incentivized immigration, mainly of children coming alone across the border, who we know 3 in 10 are subject to sexual abuse, 7 in 10 of physical abuse. It is a brutal global cartel business that goes on, that this president has whittled down, ended the humanitarian crisis that Joe Biden and Barack Obama created.
There seemed to be a moment where the president felt like he had a very strong stance, and it came to the economy and when it came to the oil industry in this country. Watch this exchange.
Would he close down the oil industry? Would you close down the oil industry?
By the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
A big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a
because
big statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
And here's the deal. But
that's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
That.
Basically, what he's saying is he is going to destroy the oil industry. Okay. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President.
All of that about Joe Biden saying that he would transition the oil industry. I know that you said that you've caught up with the president after the debate last night. Did he have anything specific to say about that? Because that was clearly a moment.
It was an eye-opening moment. Yes, he did mention that moment, that this was a moment that really none of us expected. We're in the middle of a global pandemic where Americans have lost a job through no fault of their own, but because of China, and the solution of a major party candidate is to end an industry that millions of Americans get their livelihoods from. It just goes to show how out of touch the Democrat Party of today is, to have a moment on stage where you will eliminate an industry when Americans are in pain, and you have the greatest jobs president president who's bringing this economy back in President Trump.
Kayleigh, you've seen the surge in early voting. You've obviously seen the polls. You and I have talked about that on many occasions. So many are saying that this comes down to the economy and pocketbook issues, while there's so much else out there. Larry Kudlow said this on Fox Business earlier, and I want to ask you about it. Watch.
I think the key point here is the fourth quarter. There is so much momentum coming out of Q3. The housing story is literally a boom. The automobile story, another boom. Consumer spending is very, very strong. And as I say, people going back to work.
Since the president continues to poll above Joe Biden when it comes to who voters trust to handle the economy, they say it's Donald Trump. Is there still time for President Trump to make this case to American voters to sway or change minds 11 days out?
Yes, and look, I would argue that Americans have lived through the Trump economy. For 3 years, you had historic low unemployment, paychecks going up at a rate 5 times the past administration for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, for Americans generally. He has proven his ability to increase income, create jobs. A pandemic happened. He had to shut down the economy to save 2 million lives. But rest assured, look, we're exceeding expectations each time. The CBO predicts something, we exceed expectations. The hottest economy in modern history is coming back again under President Trump.
Circling back where I started, Kayleigh, we haven't heard from the president yet this morning. When do you expect we will first?
I think you'll be hearing from him later this afternoon. He has 2 rallies. He'll be with reporters all throughout those rallies, so I'm certain you'll be hearing from him. He's in a great mood, and he is very happy with his performance, as he should be.
How's he feeling about Florida? That's where he's headed.
He's feeling very strong about Florida. He'll be casting his ballot this weekend on Saturday. It's his home state. He loves this state, and this state resoundingly endorsed his policy in the 2018 midterms, and we think that they will do so again.
Kayleigh, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much.